Hello and welcome to this week's episode of FireDEV, a fireside chat with people in the industry. Today I am joined by Simon Smith. Simon, how are you doing?
Hi, Farhan. Yeah, I'm having a really good day, thank you. Getting loads done, really sorting things out.
Good, good stuff. So you're in the UK as well. How's the weather where you are right now? Because it's not the best where I am.
It's turning out to be an absolutely classic British summer in London. Yeah, I think we've had some very good weather in June where it felt like the Costa del Sol, but July is proving to be very British because you can never be quite sure when it's going to rain. It might be sunny when you leave the house, it might be warm, but you need to take your raincoat, your umbrella, because it's probably going to rain at some point during the day.
Yeah, that's what literally happened to me today. At lunchtime, I went for a walk, about 20, 25 minutes. And when I was about 3 minutes, like it was cloudy, don't get me wrong, but it didn't rain at all. And it wasn't really cold either or breezy, but it was all right. And about 2, 3 minutes before I got home, literally just started raining, like just spitting it down. I was just thinking, luckily, it was literally when I was 2, 3 minutes around the corner. And yeah, I got a bit wet, but it could have been worse. I could have been halfway through and had to walk 10, 15 minutes. But yeah, it is that typical British weather.
So, good old England, you've got to love it.
Oh, yeah. So you founded Excalibur.fm. What
Yes.
is Excalibur for, the audience?
Excalibur.fm is a Web3 audio platform. So we're enabling audio creators to upload their content, whether that be podcasts or music or even audiobooks, can be uploaded onto the platform. And an NFT is minted of their content when they create it. So normally NFTs are associated with JPEGs. A JPEG is basically a digital file. So the audio file, the MP3 that a creator has created, can be hashed into the blockchain and turned into an NFT in exactly the same way as a JPEG would be. So it gives that unique registration of that audio file, which can be associated with the creator's wallet address. And then the audience, when they listen to that content for free, have the option to make a contribution to the creator by minting a copy of that NFT using cryptocurrency. And then they can have a copy of that content in their wallet as a unique file that only they own, and they could potentially give that to somebody else in the future, which is very different to buying something on Amazon or Audible, where you don't really own it. You can't really give it away to somebody else. And if the central platform that holds that content decides to shut it down at some point, then you won't have access to what you paid for anymore. So it's a kind of real ownership model that we can achieve with the decentralized media.
Okay, and what sort of blockchain are you using for that?
We're on Solana. Yeah, we chose Solana because it has very low transaction fees, and we believe that micropayments is one of the key abilities, or one of the key use cases of crypto, is the ability for people to pay each other in a peer-to-peer way without incurring high transaction fees. One of the intentions with our platform is that most of the money that's paid, almost all of it, in fact, should go through to the creator. So once our platform is getting some real traction, we will be getting a 5% transaction fee. Right now, we are allowing all the money to go through to the creator, less the very small transaction that the Solana network takes for storing and transacting data.
Okay, and obviously, you're using Solana. I mean, did you ever think about using, the Ethereum blockchain? Because obviously I would say that's what the most popular one currently. I know Solana is growing a lot due to the flexibility and the fees.
We looked at Ethereum, yeah. At the point where we were getting started, we were in the throes of the bull market of 2021, and Ethereum transactions were incredibly expensive. So we felt that was never really going to deliver on the use case of what we wanted to do. We wanted it to be low transaction fees, low cost minting. So yeah, Ethereum wasn't appropriate for us. We decided it had to be something a bit more advanced, a bit more low cost, and Solana was the favorite one for that one.
Okay, and do you have an app right now? Because obviously that's one of the things that a lot of people gravitate to is an app. So what's the app
Yeah,
situation?
we have a web app. Yeah, you can install a web app on your phone without going through the App Store, because of course the App Store is completely centralized. They control everything that goes in there. So if you want to have a decentralized bit of software, then you've got websites. Websites still very functional, and a web app is effectively making a website work exactly like an app would on your phone, without having to pay 30% to the App Store for everything you want to transact whilst using it.
Okay, I mean, there's a few questions I've got around that. The first is, yes, it's a web app, but do you feel like you might be limiting your potential base of users? Because the thing that most people will do when they want something on their phone, let's like some type of application, is they'll go to the App Store, Google Play Store. That's their first point of call. Like, I find most people, at least not right now, they're not that fussed about it being a web app per se. I know web apps have got really good to the point where it's hard to distinguish, but their first point of call is the App Store.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know we all like to use apps. They are very convenient. At some point,
Mm.
we have an app, and the way that would function is if you want to purchase the
Because even the
NFT.
browser itself, is an app on your phone.
It is. That's true. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
In practice, the browser is an app, but Apple doesn't have sufficient control over that browser that they only allow you to use websites that will pay them 30% of any transactions that you do on the website whilst in that
For
browser.
now, I bet they're looking into
At some
some
point, they might
patent for
try to
that.
nail that one down. I mean, certainly what's gone on with Damas in the last few weeks has been interesting because they got kicked off of the App Store because they were enabling Lightning transactions. And I think, previously that's always just been tips, but I think Apple have spotted the fact that there's now NFTs on the Bitcoin blockchain, so they may consider that people might be buying NFTs through Damas. So there was a bit of a hoo-ha over that one, but it seems like Damas is back on the App Store now, and Zaps are possible. So yeah, it's interesting to see how this one's going to pan out because if Apple push too hard on it, then they're literally going to push everyone down the web app route. Once people get used to using web apps, they might just find they don't need the Apple App Store at all.
Yeah, I mean, my pushback on that is people unfortunately do like convenience, and it's like you look at social media and how people have it's become more public knowledge that social media it's all tech companies in general, but let's say you do just look at social media companies where a lot of information is being freely shared, text, video, audio, pictures, all of that sort of stuff. They are using that for third party marketing. They are making money off it. A lot of the content they are owning effectively, that's what you're agreeing to. And even though I come across people all the time moaning about it, very rarely do I come across a person that says, I don't like it. I don't want them to have my data. I've deleted Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all these social media, platforms. I find people moaning about it, but never deleting it. Like, I'll see someone moan about, Apple, they're taking 30%, even if they're not a developer per se, and really doesn't affect them in terms of because they're just buying, the in-app purchases or the apps or whatever, and but they'll moan about it. Yet they'll, let's say, not have an iPhone, but then they might have a MacBook. But if they don't have a MacBook, they'll have a PlayStation or an Xbox where there's kind of a similar model, and it's like I find people are picking and choosing. So I mean, for me, I hope these technologies like Web3, blockchain, real proper use cases of NFTs do come into effect. I just feel like there's just so much barrier to entry right now. Because again, I'm one of those people that has Signal as a messaging platform, but I have like one or two people on there because everyone else doesn't want to use it. They want to
Yeah,
use WhatsApp. So it's either I have two people that I can contact, and
yeah,
I cut out every single person, and that includes my wife as well. I would have to cut every, her out as well, and like parents, or I, do have those other services, and then again, it's that thing. Uh, if the other major applications are sticking to the App Store and other conventional means, yes, people may have like some sort of web app or web app store approach. Because I remember a few years, about 10 years ago, in the early days of the App Store, I envisioned a web-based application store to be able to easily download apps from the web, put them on your phone, access them, because websites were getting very smooth, were starting to get very smooth, almost like apps back then. That was before progressive web apps, but I would love for something like that to happen. It is just that thing of, will people go away from it? And again, the other side I want to talk about is, yes, Apple take 30%, but I think they do provide quite a lot of service. Like, it's all generally always up and running. They, handle updates very well. They have some sort of, curated list for you, or, categories. That's like the other thing. Like, how do you think web apps can, counter that?
Yeah, there's
Because if you go into different websites
a lot of
to
questions.
download it, it's not the best.
Yeah, no, a lot of questions there. I mean, you're exactly right. We have all given away our privacy for convenience. This has been happening, really since computers began. Ultimately, they're making our lives more convenient,
Hmm.
but in order to use applications, we are giving away our data. I mean, this probably wasn't so much the case with Web 1 prior to the year 2000. Most websites were read. We were read only. It was content that people could publish. And if you were a developer or you knew a developer, you could pay a developer, you could publish yourself in a way that you were never really able to before. If you wanted to publish previously, you had to go through publishing houses, the people that owned the newspapers or the radio TV stations. So, Web 1 was very much more democratic than what came before. But the problem they had was with monetization. The dot-com boom was a very big boom. A lot of people made a lot of money, a lot of people lost a lot of money. But the thing really crashed because these websites just didn't have a way of making money. So that was the trade-off that happened with pay-per-click. Once pay-per-click really got functional as a technology where your data could be passed through to the next website, so the advertiser would know who it was clicking and how many people clicked, and they could really start to track the user behavior. That's what really created real value on the internet, because people gave away their data, the advertisers used it to target them, they increased their return on investment. And so companies that wanted to make money on the internet, they figured out what they had to do was gather as much user data as possible, as much detail on people as possible, and sell it to the highest bidder. That's what the internet became in order to monetize. But I mean, that's the trade-off that we've all kind of accepted. And in many ways, the bug in the system is actually the human beings, because we could have refused. We could have said we will not give our data away, no matter how much fun it is to share our photos with people on the other side of the world and stay in contact with people. We're going to absolutely refuse to enter into this big brother state. But we didn't. We all got seduced into it. We all gave our data away. We're all using WhatsApp. I mean, I've got Signal. We use Signal as a company to communicate with each other. But yeah, it's one of those things where the density of population are on WhatsApp, so you can contact everyone on WhatsApp, so you use
Or
WhatsApp.
Messenger, or something,
Yeah, yeah.
or one of these other. I mean, it's all Facebook, technically. So,
And
but yeah,
Steve
it's
Zuckerberg, and
they are.
he's trying to take over Twitter now as well by creating a very similar competitor and leveraging the Instagram user base. A lot of people would just go on Threads because they
Yeah,
don't have
I'm
to do another.
surprised it took them that
So much.
long to try and do it.
He's waited his time out. He waited for
Yeah,
Elon Musk to go in there and totally overpay for it and then mess things up. And now he's launching
yeah,
his competitor at just the right time. So yeah, I mean
yeah.
it's interesting because I mean I believe in Web3. I believe that now that we do have a native payment system for the internet and Bitcoin and potentially other coins as well, we have a situation where we can monetize more effectively. And that the reality is it may not be as convenient, and certainly Excalibur probably isn't as convenient to use as Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It's another thing that people have got to figure out how to use. And even me, I mean, I'm somebody who's experienced in technology, but I still find a bit of kind of lethargy there in actually picking up a new app and taking the time to learn how to use it. So it's going to be a struggle to get this new technology to the point where people find it as easy to use as the Web 2 applications. But I do think in the long run, the benefit is going to be there. I do think over time, people are going to be more uncomfortable with the level of intrusion that they're actually getting with Web 2 applications. And ultimately, yeah, we do sign up to it, but we can choose to opt out. We can choose to do exactly as you described there earlier on, and say, right, I'm not going to use any Facebook applications, and I'm only going to use the open source stuff, with Signal or Simplex. The one that's come out recently is Nostr, which is a social layer for Web3, which is built on top of Bitcoin Lightning. There's lots of applications popping up there now, which people can transfer their profile from one application to another. Anything that's built on Nostra is composable, so you can take your data between those different applications. So, I mean, I think in reality, we're at a very early stage of this process. It's going to be a while before we're getting, really strong traction, and we are a real competitor to the existing applications, to the Web2 applications. So I'm confident that there will be real value there, but we're at the process of testing the tools, figuring out where the opportunities are, figuring out the formula that really works for the use cases. The use cases are coming through, but we've got to figure out how we can monetize those, how we can get users to interact and feel like they are part owners of that platform, and they want to then help recruit people, help bring good content onto the platform. I mean, one of the things you said there was that Apple has, they're providing a curation service in terms of suggesting apps that come through to you. But there's an incentive system there. They are a company, and their job is to maximize profits for their shareholders. So they will be naturally inclined to promote applications to you that have been proven to deliver the most revenue to them. So they're
Mm.
monitoring which apps people are spending most money on. In reality, that's probably the most addictive apps, not the ones that offer the best user experience. Those are the ones that, the addictive ones that bring in the most money to Apple will be the ones that they're promoting to us. So, curation could be better for sure. I think, this kind of pattern exists throughout social media online. I mean, YouTube, they have a lot of videos on there. The ones that are best quality, the ones probably don't actually deliver much advertising revenue to them. But there's some out there that really get you hooked, keep you in a state where you might want to buy something. You might be influenced by the advertising. And those are the ones that they're putting to the top of the list. So I think there's an opportunity there that the users can really take control again of the content that they're listening to or that they're viewing, and they can be part of managing a curation process by choosing to make a donation to a creator in the style of a pay-as-you-go Patreon. They really have the opportunity to actually do a very strong vote with their money as to what they think is good. They don't need to go onto the Patreon website. They don't need to put the credit card details and name and address in. And they don't need to enter into a subscription. They could just connect their crypto wallet, be pseudonymous, and connect to the application and donate some of their hard-earned cryptocurrency, which in many cases, certainly in the case of Solana, is probably worth a whole lot less than it used to be. But yeah, they can donate that through to the creator, and they can provide some funds that help perpetuate future production. If they like the content, why not donate to it and keep it going?
Yeah, I mean, indeed. So, you know, let's say if we get past the hurdles of, let's say, not using something like the App Store, everyone's using progressive, web apps. That's all good. Like, why would somebody? I can understand it from the content creator's point of view, but why would somebody want to use something like Excalibur and Excalibur specifically over Spotify, over Google Podcasts, over those other platforms? Like, what's the true incentive for the user that's going to listen to these podcasts, and potentially even music as well?
Yeah, I mean, for the creator, it's the opportunity that they can own their content. So they're
Mm-hmm.
uploading there. The fact that it's hashed onto the blockchain at that point in time, it creates a unique reference, which actually serves as a proof that it's their content. They can reach out directly to their audience on Spotify or YouTube. Their advertising or share of the advertising revenue probably is fractions of 1 cent per stream. So people that even get hundreds of thousands of streams on those platforms, quite often they get less than $1 in total revenue. It's quite shocking. But if you're a creator that maybe has your 1,000 true fans and you send them a link and you say, okay, this is a new technology, you can mint a copy of this NFT that I've just sent you. And this is my latest podcast. You can listen to it here for free. You don't have to pay anything if you don't want to. There's no ads on this one. That's the deal. We're saying we're not going to put advertising on it, rather than have your time wasted with the advertising. We're going to give you the option to pay for the content by minting the NFT. And if you do that, you get that token that's held in your wallet that you can keep forever, or you can sell it. If there's at some point in the future, perhaps if what we create becomes a limited edition, it may be something you might even be able to sell for more than you created for, than you bought it for. But you will be able to access the group chat room that's based on that podcast, and you'll be able to communicate with the other people that like the content enough to mint that NFT as well. So you're actually joining a community that exists around that content, and you have the opportunity to find other people that you perhaps have something in common with because they like that content as well. So for creators, it's ownership, it's community building, it's better monetization, it's the opportunity to distribute directly. I mean, albeit they will be using those Web2 channels to deliver the content to their customers. They'll take the link and they might put it on WhatsApp groups or on LinkedIn or post it out on Twitter. And then when people click through, they're on Excalibur, they're listening on Excalibur. On the same page as they're listening, they can mint that NFT. If they want to make a smaller donation, they can do that on the page as well. They can even donate with Bitcoin if they want to.
Okay. And you're heavily into the Web3 space. What's your background? What did you do before doing this, and what were your motivations getting into this? Because you're not, again, I don't mean any offense, but you're not young. You're not like 20 years old where your first job can potentially be in the Web3 space. So you must have done something before Web3.
I may
So
be a little bit over the age of 20. You could be right about that one. My
yeah.
my working life has been very much straddling technology and finance. So in many ways, blockchain technology is really the ideal space for me. But yeah, I studied economics, came out of university in the 90s. That probably gives you a clue as to how old I am. That was a vigorous session. So working in finance at that point was very difficult. Managed to land a job in technology, demonstrated I was very good at that, and ended up being a developer. So I was developing Oracle databases, worked for a bank, worked for a university. Still had a strong interest in finance. So in my spare time, I started trading on the spread bet markets in house prices, trying to predict where the future of house prices were going to go in 2002. That was an interesting time because many people thought they would crash at that point, and they continued to go upwards. So had some really good gains on that, and then made enough money that I could go and become a full-time investor and trader. So I left my job, started doing trading full-time, and also did startup tech investments on the side. So that's angel investments. I actually started doing that the year before Dragon's Den started on TV. So I had quite a long experience there of getting involved in tech startups, providing funding, doing the due diligence, trying to figure out which ones had the opportunity to do well and which ones might not succeed. And many startups don't succeed. That's a reality. So you have to be prepared to take some losses. But yeah, I mean that led me into the world of crypto in 2013. Started buying Bitcoin. Didn't really do as much due diligence on it as I should have done. Yeah, it was a bit of a kind of wing it. You could see that there was limited supply and it was probably going to go up by more. But had I really sat down and done the research into Bitcoin at that point, I probably would have really valued the time I spent on that because I've only really done the
Put a
work.
lot more into it.
Yeah, the last few years, I've really kind of gone down the rabbit hole, and now I'm very much a fan of Bitcoin, and I do see it as a future currency for the planet. With the Lightning Network, it's now been made fast and cheap. There's all kinds of applications being built on top of Bitcoin Lightning now. And I think over the next few years, we're going to see a total mushrooming of the space as people find that there's so many good things that they can do. The fact that they can make these small payments on a peer-to-peer basis, rewarding each other for their creative work, is going to create a very strongly vibrant, creative, almost a renaissance, I think, of creative technology.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, Bitcoin, especially investing back then, was it's one of those things that when you look back, you think that was probably one of the easiest things in the last 20, 30, or 40 years. Because I know people talk about the dot-com bubble and, raising funds and that. There's no way, again, I wasn't around as an adult then, that I don't think raising funds then, pre the dot-com bubble was as easy as putting $1,000 into Bitcoin and just holding onto it for 5 7 years. Like the obviously again you don't know, but it is that crazy thing of you know and, and the thing is there's so many people we won't even know their names that invested in it, probably just on a whim, didn't touch it, still have access to it, and may have sold out, even now or a few years ago, back in like 2017, when the prices, I think Bitcoin was hitting about almost $70,000. And yeah, I think I wonder what the stat is of if you walked through London or New York City, how many Bitcoin millionaires you would come across within a few days, but you wouldn't know. I bet there's a few.
I think the thing is that when you say, yeah, putting some money into Bitcoin and sitting on it for 5 years, that's actually not that easy. In reality, the price of Bitcoin is very volatile. And,
Hmm.
when you've made a bit of money, it's very tempting to cash out and go and buy that Xbox you wanted to buy or buy that car that you wanted to buy.
To huddle is it is very hard. Obviously,
It
it is
does.
an it is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
hindsight thing.
Yeah, I mean, we can all look back and say, if only we bought Bitcoin in 2010, but we didn't know back then. I mean, even when I bought it in
Yeah.
2013, I didn't really understand it, and back then the wallets didn't tell you to withdraw your private keys, and the wallets, many of them were honeypots, they were Ponzi schemes. They were, kind of
Mm,
places where they were storing your keys and they would wait until there was enough money had gone through that wallet and they would just steal the lot. There was many, many situations like that. So really to really buy Bitcoin and hold it and have confidence that you could keep it, you would have to really do the deep dive into the technology and figure out how to self custody. And to hold on to it, you'd have to have very strong nerve, to not think, okay, this thing, because of course, back then we all thought that we're going to ban it. I mean, people say this now, like, 10 years ago, it looked so much like the government would never allow this to happen. And yet here we are, in 2023, and you've got the SEC losing court cases against Ripple. I mean, I've got to say, Ripple to me looks like a total scam, and yet the SEC are losing a court case against them. Bitcoin ETF is now coming with BlackRock. That they are the biggest fund manager in the world, so close to the American government, and they're advocating Bitcoin. Back in 2017, Larry Fink was saying it was a index of money laundering, and now he's
mm,
saying Bitcoin is potentially better than gold. This is a total turnaround. This technology is really maturing, and it's being accepted in a way that people never imagined. I mean, it really is surprising. If the we've always thought there would be a phase where they would fight us, but if all that was just taking Coinbase and Binance to court, if that's all it was, then it's going to be an easy one to win because fundamentally we have a much better technology than any money we've ever had before.
mm. But do you think it's a matter of them genuinely coming round and now being on the side of crypto, blockchain, seeing the value of these technologies, or is it more they was part of the old, what you call the old guard? They didn't want something new every this platform or so something like with blockchain, crypto, or something else, and they tried to basically shut it down as they probably have other technologies and they've succeeded, didn't work, and now they're like, we can still get maybe a handle on it because we're BlackRock, we're the government, we're still the de facto power, in control right now. Let's just get hold of it. Let's, whether that's creating our own coin and making everyone use that, but it's basically it's like they're using the dollar, but they're not using the dollar, but they are, in a way. But we're calling something else, and we're saying it's decentralized, but we're basically controlling it. And what's your take on that? Did you think there's really, things have actually changed, or it's just them realizing this train can't be stopped, so might as well get into first class while we can?
Yeah, I think there's a number of different things there. I mean, we've all seen China try to ban Bitcoin. I think they announced at least 5 times that I've heard that they're banning Bitcoin, and yet there's
It
still
feels like they're always doing it. I feel like I just hear China's banning it. I'm like, again?
it's still there. It's still there in China, and China is the most authoritarian state in the world, and they've not succeeded in banning crypto, not succeeded in banning Bitcoin. I mean, you can go and sue, the head of Ripple if you want to, but you can't sue Bitcoin. It's open source code that a
Mm.
wide network of people are choosing to install on their computers, and they're choosing to respect the system as a way of exchanging value with each other. You can't compete with that. The system is designed to be something that cannot be taken down by the authorities. And whoever created it at the beginning, and obviously the group of cypherpunks there with Adam Back and Nick Szabo and Hal Finney were all working together to try to create something like this. But that anonymous personal group of people, Satoshi Nakamoto, actually created it. They solved the double spending problem. They created the software that is still functioning to this day. I mean, there's been some minor changes to it, but effectively the original rule set is still there. You can't have more than 21 million. Anyone that tries to change the code to say there's 21 million is simply running a system that nobody else is going to participate in. So it's very powerful technology. It's designed to be something that can't be shut down. But in reality, governments never really succeed in banning anything. I mean, we all know about prohibition in America when they tried to ban that. They simply
Mm.
created a huge profitable business for the organized crime rings in America. It boosted the amount of crime that happened. It made governing things much, much harder. So ultimately, they had to give up. So with some things, they just have to recognize that it's beyond their control. They can't really ban it. And I think that's probably what's happening with Bitcoin, where they thought, if you can't beat them, you've got to join them.
Yeah, because obviously, with the alcohol, with the prohibition, or anything else, really, it just gets to a point where they say, it, if it's kind of like how drugs are now. I feel like in 20, 30 years or 50 years, we'll look back at a society and we'll look at how, criminalization and then decriminalization of certain drugs like, marijuana, how that went down, and see it similar to, prohibition almost, where, they try to, ban it, make it, illegal, but it just got so widespread and so much support behind it that they were like, we might as well tax it, because once it's legal and companies are selling it, they're selling it to a good standard, whatever the product is. And obviously, if you go into a pharmacy and buy it, let's say, you don't feel in danger compared to going into an alleyway if it's drugs, for example. And probably same with alcohol back in prohibition. I wasn't around then, I'm not that old, but I'm sure people got hurt in alleyways and buying it from people because frankly, you've obviously got nefarious characters that are within that scene. But selling it over the counter, you're getting the government's getting taxed at so many different levels. VAT in the UK, you'll be getting tax from the production of it, the distribution of it, all of that stuff. It just gets to a point where the government just says, you know what, it's easier just to have the tax, have the money, not spend the money on policing it as much, because because once the big companies can legally get involved, they'll basically eliminate the smaller drug dealers for the pure fact they're just big. Like the small guys won't compete with them. To big pharma, for example.
Definitely. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the quality, just the quality of drugs itself. If people are getting it legally, they're getting a better quality product. And that's probably better for
Mm,
people. It is. I mean,
yeah.
I don't suggest that anyone listening should take drugs, but in practice, I think if people do choose to take drugs, then the fact that they're illegal doesn't stop them. Particularly young people, the fact that they're illegal sometimes makes it more exciting. Essentially, they're more likely to do it because they want to do something rebellious. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
think
So
legalization is probably the way forward for that.
yeah, yeah, of course. And I think I think it was in Portugal that legalized like every drug, and they, I think, like 10 or so years ago, and they announced. I mean, not announced. They noticed a bunch of just generally positive trends in certain areas of the society that they didn't directly think would be affected. So I think there is some merit in it. Obviously, you don't want people in school or standing outside of school, you know, snorting crack or having marijuana or anything like that.
Absolutely
But
not. No,
but again, it doesn't stand them drinking alcohol either. Like in those environments, like it's got to a point where alcohol, though legal, if you're just freely drinking it on the streets, especially in certain areas, like you'll get told off. Like the police will come. So if it gets to that level where it is very much okay, you stick to yourself, then I think the government will be like, we might just let it happen because we're gonna get tax on it. Plus, if they're effectively not harming anyone, we ain't gonna get blamed, or nobody's gonna get blamed for it. We just have a few people moan, but that's it.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think that's the way we're going to go in practice. I mean, governments have a lot of things to deal with these days, and let's face it, they've lost the war on drugs, haven't they? It totally failed.
Yeah.
They failed to wipe it out. They failed to stop it getting in. Society has moved to the point where it's seen as being much more of a mainstream thing than it ever was before. So yeah, I think the government has to adjust accordingly. As I say, I still don't recommend anyone take any drugs if they're listening. But I think the government has to be realistic about what they can achieve in this scenario. And yeah, there's parallels there for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's a new thing. In reality, it's not really harming anyone. A lot of people make the complaint about the energy that's used in the mining of Bitcoin, but it uses far less than air conditioning systems, far less than the existing banking system. And it is actually providing utility. I think that's the mistake that's made when people do say, "Oh, Bitcoin is a waste of electricity or it's damaging the environment." I think they're not actually understanding that there is a real use case there. It is a form of money that's better than any form of money we've ever had before. And if we choose to stop using it or even ban it because we're concerned about 0.4% of the world's electricity being used in creating Bitcoin and in securing the network and processing the transactions, then that would be incredibly short sighted. And I think humanity would be missing out on an amazing new technology. In reality, what would happen would be geographical arbitrage. Countries that banned it would just find that the startups and the people that want to use Bitcoin would go to other countries. So they would be missing out. They would be going into the dark ages, whilst other countries are experiencing the new technology and becoming the forefront of development.
Oh yeah, and obviously, the thing with that side of it, when people are talking about, because I've had that argument, in front of me before from people that, it's using so much electricity, so much, and like you're saying, when you compare it to, let's say, conventional banking systems and other, systems, because when the media talks about it's using X amount of electricity, they will say, it's using X amount of dollars, or it's the equivalent of X amount of homes per week, per month. And when you see the numbers like that, you start to think, it's a bit high. But like you said, it's not that high when you compare it to other things. And some people might use the argument it's not fully scaled up to the whole world yet. But again, my counter argument to that is that doesn't happen overnight. That takes time, and there's innovations that occur when something scales up. That whether it's the electricity usage, whether it's it just getting faster, or the chips or the hardware just getting better and more efficient, whatever it is, it it's one of the things that it kind of just resolves itself. Obviously, there are people resolving it because there's an incentive within industry, and they're the companies that will survive. But it kind of just resolves itself. That's one of those things. It's like PayPal in the early days; they gave money to people to sign up. That's clearly not a scalable model, but they did it early on to get to a point where they were large enough, and then afterwards, the network effect kicked in. And you see
Yeah.
with companies, you see with Amazon, their returns policy is still amazing compared to most other companies. But how it was like 5 to 10 years ago, where they would literally send you the money. I remember returning stuff. I would get the money whilst I was on the phone doing the return, make sure the money's in my account, and then I will put the phone down, and then I'll be like, yeah, I'll ship it when I want to. That's obviously not a scalable, customer service model up to the level that they've got today. But it didn't have to be. They just figure other things out to, make it scale. And obviously, they reduce the customer service, but they add other stuff into Prime and whatnot that makes you think, what, customer service ain't as good as it used to be, but I've got all these benefits in Prime. I've got all these other benefits as a part of Amazon. So yeah, it's one of those things that, because it takes time to scale up. um, I've never been worried about that. The electricity usage side of it. I think there's definitely some money to be made and business opportunities in that area of Bitcoin and blockchain and crypto compared to some of the other areas that people are always looking at. But I don't. To me, it's not a concern. Like, it scales up, things will get solved. Somebody will solve it because there's an incentive to solve it.
This is, yeah, it's such a thing that the media have gotten hold of this idea of the electricity usage. But I think, like a lot of things in Bitcoin, it's actually solved with education. I mean, a few years ago, I was probably saying, "Oh yeah, Bitcoin uses too much electricity. Maybe we should look at these other proof of stake coins, because they're using less electricity, they're more efficient. Maybe that's a good idea." Once you've really taken the time to educate yourself and you really understand how the Bitcoin mining process works, how the proof of work system provides a real secure store of value in the way that no other cryptocurrency does, and certainly in a way that the pound sterling or the US dollar, certainly they don't offer a real long-term store of value, and we can all see that in the depletion of our spending power that we were experiencing in the last couple of years with these fiat currencies. Bitcoin is a strong store of value because it's difficult to make, because it costs energy to make it. That's what demonstrates that it's a store of value. That's what means it holds its value, just like gold holds its value because it requires time and energy to create gold. So it's one of the core features of Bitcoin is that it requires energy to make it. But of course, the miners that are out there, if they're paying retail price for electricity, then there's so much competition out there between the miners that anyone that's paying retail price, they're actually losing money because there's other people out there that have gone and sort out waste energy or stranded energy where people can't bring it to a civilized area. And they're using that electricity. They're fixing up a satellite internet. They're generating electricity from waste gas and oil mines or hydropower places that are so far away from civilizations they can't really practically be used. But what the whole thing has become is an incentive system to find cheaper, more renewable forms of electricity. So Bitcoin is funding the development of new renewable sources because they know once it's created, there will be a customer there that will pay money for that electricity. Even before they can put the cables in to get it through to a civilization, they know they can use that electricity once it's running. So it really has become something quite the opposite of a waste of electricity or a damaging thing for the environment. It's actually becoming a real positive thing for the environment. And there's people out there. If you spend your time looking around the internet, you'll find environmental campaigners who are actually advocating Bitcoin because they've taken the time to understand how this incentive system really works.
Oh yeah, it is one of those things that one you need education of to understand what these figures mean, and plus the other thing is media has an incentive. That's the same with because you get a lot of YouTubers that are a bit more scientific based in their content. They have an incentive to promote content that may make you feel negative towards some sort of technology because they get views and they get views and that makes them add revenue. Again, nothing wrong with that, but just acknowledge the fact that Apple's probably not going to come out and say Android is the best OS, mobile OS in the world. Like there's an incentive for Apple to put down Android, to shit on Android. Obviously they'll never probably do it full on directly, but they'll do it in a roundabout way. Do you remember those ads back in the day of the Apple versus the Mac versus the Window ads?
Yeah,
Yeah, so like obviously they were pretty in your face, but again, you're not going to see Tim Cook, in an interview, star, pissing on Bill Gates and Satya Nadella and all those other guys over at Microsoft and start talking bad about Microsoft phones, and even though that was a failure for them, that's not gonna happen. But you got to acknowledge that like the media is going to create these sensational articles. Never do I ever come across an article, very rare, that say there's this new technology, it could be amazing. Don't We personally do not 100% understand or know how it's going to pan out, but it's interesting, take a look. Like do you ever see an article like that?
yeah. No, you're right. Everyone loves a doom story. It really is.
Yeah,
That's what
or
what's
over the top positive
headline.
story that's not correct as well.
It's engagement. It keeps the engagement, doesn't it? And really, the kind of
Yeah.
polarization when they say, "Oh, this is Bitcoin, it's bad." It does. It sells newspapers, sells ad space, doesn't it? That's basically what it is, really.
Oh yeah. So as an investor, uh, what because you mentioned you invested in some tech companies, startups. Were there ever any companies that, if you mention them, like people would know? Are there any like notable companies there? Plus, also on top of that, what tips would you give to a startup looking to raise funds? What's important?
There was no real household names. The ones that I succeeded with were still relatively small when they sold those companies, but they usually started with just one person with an idea, so there was still a good uplift in terms of value. If you get to the point where you've got maybe 10 million in sales and a number of staff working for you. When there was one classic one where it was a company that created printer ink from old car tires. They grind up old car tires and turn that into printer ink, the OEM printer ink for the printers. So yeah, we managed to sell that business and got a good price for it to an American buyer that wanted to have the capacity for their business in the UK. It was a long time coming. That took 9 years to get there, so slightly painful in terms of waiting to actually get any real liquidity out. And that's one of the biggest problems with startups is that it is a very illiquid business, and you do have to wait quite some time, quite often, before you can actually release the money that you've made on paper. But yeah, for entrepreneurs that are looking to raise money, I would say certainly in the UK you're in a strong position if you can fit within the rules of the EIS scheme, and your investors can get some tax back on their investment. But you probably would be wanting to try and find the investors that really believe in what you're doing, where they really understand the problem that you're trying to solve, and where they appreciate your commitment, your work, the tenacity that you're applying to the project. That's what investors really want to see: is hardworking people that are passionate about what they're doing and will have the staying power to go through thick and thin, because inevitably in the startup world, you're going to be encountering problems. There will be brick walls that you will have to climb over. There'll be problems that will look unsolvable, and you'll have to spend a lot of time figuring out how to solve them. So that's your job as a startup entrepreneur, is to deal with problems and solve problems. And for if you are presenting to investors, I would say try to keep your first pitch as short as possible. More than about 5 minutes is too long. But what you're really trying to do is to bait their appetite and get a few key facts, figures, get the real sense of what the business does across to them in that short time. And then if they are interested, they'll come and follow up and ask you some questions and find out more. And then, yeah, it's really just a case of trying to negotiate a good deal, trying to espouse the benefits of what you're doing and how they can benefit by working with you. And yeah, try to get a range of different investors from different backgrounds that can maybe contribute something. I certainly wouldn't rely upon them to give a full time commitment, but advice, experience, as well as the money can be useful. Always take things with a pinch of salt. But yeah, I mean, they'll be there, they'll be on board with you. If you have a good connection with them, they could potentially be a very good sounding board in a way that you won't have with your staff. Ultimately, when you're the boss, the staff are the staff, and they have different agenda to you. They have different incentives to you. So your incentives as an entrepreneur will be more aligned with the investors that are shareholders in the company. So you could potentially rely upon them for advice and a really clear head of thinking about what can be done and what can improve the company.
Oh yeah. So is Excalibur bootstrapped or is it funded? Because you're part of the investor world, or you was part of it. So you would imagine that you could get access to funds quicker than the average startup.
I probably could, yeah, but I bootstrapped it myself the whole way. I just thought, well, to try and raise money is going to take time. It's going to be a distraction from building the project itself. For me, it's a pet project. I want this thing to work. I'm very much aware that it's going to be losing money probably for quite a lot of years before it starts to turn a profit. So, it's just a case of working hard, keeping our heads down, trying to figure out how to best build a Web3 application where people can interact with media and interact with the creators, have a better monetization model, have a sense of ownership of the content. These are all the features that we know are possible with Web3. I don't think anyone out there in the real world has actually really cracked the monetization system or really found a way to deliver something to customers in a way that's going to be a very sustainable business model. I think we're still very much experimenting with the tools here, and that's what I expect to be doing for at least some time more. But I'm very excited to see what we can build, and things like Noster and the other applications that are built on top of that. There's just so many ways in which people are figuring out that they can monetize directly with their creators or with their audience, and they can use the benefits of cryptocurrency in terms of low transaction cost and a form of anonymity. It's worth saying that when people do connect with their wallet and make a payment, they're not giving their name and address and bank details. But if they are doing something that is criminal, then they can always be traced back to an exchange, because every transaction that's ever happened on Bitcoin is on the Bitcoin ledger. So it is traceable. It wasn't at the beginning when nobody was going for an exchange and giving ID, but yeah, you don't want to be doing criminal things with cryptocurrency. It's a good technology where people can do good things, and yeah, it does offer you that opportunity to not have your privacy broken. That's one of the key things about it. You can use these applications without giving any information about yourself, and you also have the comfort of knowing that the incentive system is not to deliver you poor quality content that will get you addicted and make you feel like you want to buy something. The incentive is to deliver you something of high quality, where you feel like you've really been given something that's educational or enlightening in some way that makes you want to actually make that payment and have that NFT for yourself.
Okay, I want to unpack that a little bit. So you were saying that, with Excalibur, you're bootstrapped, so you're not funded in any way, and obviously because you're from the investor world, you probably, could have raised some money, and you've chosen not to. So because you was, doing investments, are you basically in a position where you're set for life, or you've got investments that are bringing money in, or are you still an active investor? Basically, how are you maintaining your living standards and living life, whilst doing Excalibur, which, isn't making any money as far as I'm aware right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I've got a development team of three people, and good developers. They're hard to find and they're not cheap. But I've been paying them for the last year out of my own pocket, and I expect to
Hmm.
be paying them for several years more to try and get this project off the ground. So I'm not going to be stressed if that's the way it is, and if it doesn't even make any money in the end, it's not going to stress me. But the thing I really want to do is explore this technology, make a contribution to the crypto community in terms of new code, new ideas, new ways of building an economic system for digital media. I think that's what we have here, really. It's a new economic system for digital media. I mean, we've come very far in a very short space of time. It was in the year 2000, I think, that Napster was first created. And that technology has ultimately been the beginning of a process that's taken the cost of delivering digital media people down to pretty much zero. And the economic laws are that when that happens, that the price of that product goes down to zero as well. And so it's been probably a difficult thing for creators, because they feel like they might be having their copyright infringed. But what I think is that we need to start to build a new model where content is given away for free, and the people that choose to pay for it are empowered by the fact that they can join a community, they can become promoters of that content themselves. So if they find amazing new songs at a very early stage of an artist's career, they can be the people that have performed the work of a talent scout, and by putting that content out there, they can be given some form of reward that increases in value as that creator becomes more and more famous and more successful. But they'll have a digital token that gives them bragging rights to their friends to say, I was there at the beginning, I knew they were going to be good, I bought that copy of their NFT at the early days. And ultimately, that could be worth purely just something they can show to their friends and say, this is what I did. I was there.
Okay. So, Excalibur, it's in a podcasting platform. It's very interesting because we're on a podcast right now. So far,
Yeah.
FireDEV is just on the more conventional podcasts, Spotify, Google, Apple, RSS feeds, that sort of stuff. But I know a lot of people want to start some sort of podcast, big or small. So how would you recommend about going about starting a podcast? Would you recommend niche or broad? I know that's a question a lot of people have. And if it's something that's guest based, so you get like FireDEV, I get guests on every single episode. There's a different guest. How would you go about doing that? Because I'm sure you've come across some podcasts and you've researched this space pretty heavily.
Yeah, I think if you're a new podcaster and you want to learn, I think talking to either you or me about podcasting would be a good way to do that. And obviously, you could listen to this podcast, but if you wanted to speak to us directly, then you could click on the link in the description and go through to excalibur.fm and pay a small amount of money for the NFT, which would give you access to the chat room. And you can speak to either Frahan or myself about how to become a successful podcaster.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely one of the things. If you do have access to someone, obviously, like Simon said, you can message him. You can. I'm always open. So if you want to ask me, having done this will be episode 47, I believe, once it airs. In a few weeks from recording it, and you learn a lot. You learn a lot of stuff doing it. Consistently. There's a new episode every single week, Thursday, 5 a.m. GMT. There's a lot of things that if I was going back, I would give myself, advice. I'm actually thinking about doing an episode where it is just me talking and, one, going over some of the lessons and highlights of like, let's say 50 or 60 episodes, whenever that might be, plus also advice for others of, wanting to start the podcast, say, do this, make sure you don't do that because that's just a waste of your time, save those few hours or save those few weeks. So yeah, definitely try and reach out to people. And obviously it'd be great if you could reach out to Joe Rogan or Lex Friedman or any of those guys, but probably you're not going to be able to unless you're within that circle. And at that point you probably don't need that much help to be starting a podcast anyway.
Mhm.
Reach out to the more small to medium size ones, the ones that the average person hasn't heard of, but like I said, they've got 50 episodes, they've got 100 episodes. You look at them and they've got like 100, 200 episodes and you've never heard of them. Great, reach out to them. They'll probably just be happy to have someone reach out that looks like a fan, and they'll be happy to pop me an email or maybe even jump on a call, because
Yeah,
I definitely know I would, and I think Simon would as well. So that's the best way to get advice.
definitely. I think that's a very key thing you picked up on there is when you're starting out, don't go and start messaging Joe Rogan and ask to be on his podcast, because
Yeah.
in reality, he gets a lot of inbound and he's probably not going to be looking for you specifically unless you've got some very special characteristic that nobody else has. So what you probably want to do is look at your niche, whatever you're talking about. Maybe you're talking about tractors or about daffodils or whatever your podcast is about. Obviously, Frahan and I are talking about Web3, and that's what we want to be broadcasting about. But find your niche and connect with people in that space, and people that are at a similar stage of their journey to yourself. They will probably be very open to speaking to you. Maybe even people that are slightly more advanced in their journey. They'll be open. They'll want to talk with you. They'll want to team up with you in making content. And yeah, you could experiment with doing one. If you've got a really strong topic you want to talk about for an hour all on your own, then definitely go ahead and do it. But I think one of the joys of podcasting is how people can bounce off each other with a conversation. And I'm a big fan of audiobooks, but I often feel like the style of an audiobook being read could actually learn a great deal from the podcasting scene in terms of having a bit of music there and having multiple different voices that are communicating with each other rather than just having that one person read out the whole audiobook. But yeah, some situations, maybe if it's non-fiction, that might be more appropriate. So really depends. But I think, yeah, we're still at such an early stage of this new media that I'd say experimentation is probably one of the key things to do as well, because you might try doing something that nobody else has thought of doing and you might find it really works, and that could be the thing that takes you into the big time.
Yeah. Plus, you might also find that the opposite, that you just don't enjoy it. Like you have this idea that you want to talk about video games on your podcast because you love video games, but when you start getting down to it, you find it a hassle having to do an episode a week or episode every couple of weeks talking about video games instead of just sitting down and playing video games. It's like streaming, for example. I know I've tried a bit of video game streaming, and I've read this from other people as well, is that most of the time you'll make little to no money on it, and you're actually be systematic and you'll be in a chore like fashion that unless you really enjoy streaming, don't do it. Just play, your game, because otherwise you're just, or you'll be streaming it and then you're not going to get much traction for most of the time. And at that point, you just got to enjoy, playing it and not be too concerned about the, let's say, the business growth aspect of it. So yeah, definitely, experiment, because like Simon said, you might realize you don't want to do this for 50 episodes, 100 episodes, 1,000 episodes. And it might be a change of topic. It might be you don't want to do it on your own, or, you don't want to do it with the same person every single week. You want different guests, whatever that format is, figure that out. You might figure out, okay, I want this to be video based. Like FireDEV so far is audio based, and I'm 100% happy with that. I do imagine in the future doing some video based episodes, but I like the relaxed nature of not knowing that Simon is either dressed up or in his underwear. Like, I don't know, and it's the thing, I don't care. Like, we're on a podcast and we're just relaxed, chill, and we're talking about Web3 in this case. Figure that out. So you figure out what you're interested in and what you think you could actually long term talk about.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to, put their podcast on Excalibur, what's the exact process and what's the exact sort of fee structure?
Well, you basically just go to excalibur.fm, click on upload, choose your title, your description, your thumbnail picture, um, your MP3 file, and your Solana wallet address. And when you click on publish, the system will take a small amount of Solana from you to pay for your NFT storage and the storage of your media on Arwe, which is a decentralized media storage platform. And yeah, that's it. You'll have your NFT created. You'll have a link that you can share with your audience, and they can mint a copy of that NFT. As I say, 100% of the revenue minus a small Solana fee will come through to your wallet every time somebody buys one of those NFTs. So it's worth broadcasting it far and wide on social media, telling everyone about the virtues of Excalibur.fm.
Okay. And you mentioned that the the money you make, you keep that. What are the different ways of making money through a podcast that you create as an NFT, on Excalibur, for example?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to create an NFT of a podcast, then definitely do it on Excalibur. That is the best place to do it. But yeah, I mean, the NFT world, again, we're just beginning to discover this, this new technology. There's going to be so many different use cases, in terms of people doing certificates and share certificates. I mean, ultimately, a blockchain is a registry, and NFTs are ways of registering content effectively. So, Bitcoin is money. It's a very good monetary instrument, probably the best we've ever had. And we're even now starting to build NFTs on top of Bitcoin. Ultimately, if they deliver the same level of utility as NFTs on Solana or Ethereum, then people will want to use the ones on Bitcoin. If they can make them as low cost, then again, that's what's very important. People want to have reliable, secure registrations of digital media, and Bitcoin may end up being the best place to do it. But we will see. Watch this space. It's all going to be changing, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. So, Excalibur, like any other blockchain, company project, worth their salt. You have a light paper, you have a white paper as well. So, first, can you explain to the audience, what they are? Because I think some people might be thinking, what's a light paper, what's a white paper, what they offer, plus also the importance of having them.
Yeah, I mean, the white paper is your kind of full description of what you want to build or what you are building or what you have built. It's something that Satoshi Nakamoto released in October 2008. He released a white paper that described the peer-to-peer payment system that he was working on. In January 2009, 3 months later, he launched that application that he'd built. It was based on the vision that was detailed in the white paper. So it's something that gives people a taste of what you're building, Potentially, if you want people to collaborate with you, then that could be a good way to get people interested. And a light paper really is just a short version of that. It's just something that's scaled down, easier to read. Maybe doesn't give all the detail that you might want to know, but if you read the light paper and you really love it, then you'll probably go and read the white paper as well. But yeah, that's the kind of standard that's really accepted in this industry. Whatever you're doing, why not write about it? Tell people what you're doing, get them interested.
Okay. And the papers for Excalibur, did you write them yourself? And also advice on top of that. How do you recommend, going about writing them? If this is the first time somebody's doing it, what should you include? What should you not include?
You want to be including the objective and the detail of how you're going to achieve that objective. The thing to do is try and keep it as simple as possible, and still try and explain what you're doing. So keep out the jargon, keep your sentences not too long. Try not to go off the point too much. So you might write it all down. The thing to do is to then sleep on it, read through it the next day, rewrite it all again. Probably do that 7 or 8 times to end up getting something that's really good quality that people are really going to be able to read. If it flows through, then people will start reading and they'll get through and be interested and intrigued by what you're doing and get to the end. And they will become your product champions. They will be the people that will talk about it with other people and express their interest in what you're doing and getting the word around. That's what it is. Bitcoin had zero marketing budget. It really only succeeded because people understood what it was doing. They understood the benefits because that had been clearly articulated by Satoshi Nakamoto in the white paper. That's what made them want to use that software. That's what made them want to be part of the network. They went and told other people, and that's what built the Bitcoin network to what it is today.
Okay. So you mentioned that Excalibur uses the Solana network. What is the rest of the tech stack, Excalibur uses? Because obviously, you got the web app, you got the website, you got anything else as well. Solana, won't do all of that. It's more just the blockchain network. So what's your full tech stack? And what's the reasoning behind going down whatever route that is for the more technical people out there?
Yeah, we're built using React. The React front end is very much standard within this industry. You could use
Mm-hmm.
Angular. Angular tends to be more of a corporate kind of software. React is the one that most people use in this space because it's a lot easier to teach yourself React, a lot easier than Angular. So a lot of people in this space are self-taught. A lot of people are fully experienced with a computer studies degree and they've worked in traditional finance and they've decided to make the switch over. But there's plenty of people out there that are just so fascinated. They've taught themselves through YouTube videos and exercises to learn to code and build systems. So yeah, React seems to be the default because it's a hobbyist combined with the professionals. And everyone's trying to create something interesting.
Okay. And was Excalibur created by the people you've hired, or was it contracted out initially, or did you have an involvement on the technical side, the coding, the developing side? How was that handled?
Well, I mean, I've written the code for I'm in the line of code for 18 years, so I know well enough that I'm probably not the perfect person to be writing the code for this application. So I've gone out there and gone around hackathons and found some really good developers. Also gone through recruiters and drawn on my old contacts from back in the days when I used to be a developer. And I've brought together a good team of people that are really capable. And I know that their time being spent on developing is worth a whole lot more than my time spent on developing. So my time is spent on really kind of trying to find good marketing people to market this product and bring the whole team together and manage the whole process and try and keep it all on the rails.
Okay. And because it's on Solana, have you ever thought about not using an alternative blockchain or cryptocurrency, for example, but using multiple blockchain potentially,
We are
possibly for it?
as we speak, we are in the process of developing Bitcoin Lightning on the platform, so you can pay with Bitcoin Lightning.
Ah,
Yeah, now that we're getting NFTs on Bitcoin, I think the whole thing is going to be possible to multi-chain. So I think, yeah, in the long run, the cryptocurrency that's going to hold its value better than anything else is going to be Bitcoin. So if we are telling people that they need to have a certain cryptocurrency to be on this platform, I would much rather tell them to use Bitcoin than any other form of currency because that's the one that I'm confident will hold its value.
okay. And we're talking about Bitcoin, and that's the one that you think is the best one to be using ideally. If somebody's new to the space, what resources do you recommend for a beginner to go and learn more about Bitcoin, blockchain as well, and also what sort of platform? Because there's so many platforms out there that you can use to leverage cryptocurrencies and blockchains. But we've seen over the years with platforms like Mt. Gox, BitConnect, the stuff with the Crypto Queen, all that sort of stuff. That's just free to mention. That there's you got to be very careful. So, like, what are some of the resources and platforms that you recommend?
I'd say the first thing to know if you're a new person in this industry is that a lot of people lose a lot of money in this industry. The main reason they lose money is because they don't understand. So if you want to invest in this sector, the first thing to invest is your time, and invest your time in learning as much as possible as you can. So Bitcoin is a good place to start. That was the first cryptocurrency. So I would recommend you try to find good YouTube videos, good podcasts, good books where you can read and learn about this subject. There is so much to learn. It's going to take you a lot of time to really understand it. But if you're anything like me, then you will get very fascinated by it and you'll end up spending a lot of time doing it, boring your friends and family to death with the thing that you're reading about because you find it so fascinating. But that's the journey. And I recommend you start on that journey, start learning before you really put your money at risk, because there's many mistakes that can be made, and many of those are made because you don't know enough about what you're dealing with, or because other people try to make you think that they know more. They try to think that you need to give them your private keys. Never give your private keys to anyone. If you do, you're basically just giving your money away. So yeah, it's really very important. And if you want to be successful either in working in this sector or in investing in this sector, it's all about doing the work. That's the whole proof of work system. You are much more likely to succeed if you do the work, you learn how it works, you look at the history of how this thing evolved, you look at what's gone on in the past, and you try to really spend a lot of time understanding what could happen in the future, because it is going to be a technology of the future, but it doesn't mean you'll necessarily make any money out of it by investing. It really requires a belief that it's going to succeed in the future, and trying to figure out where the opportunities are and trying to see where the pitfalls are, because there are many.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's one of those things, you got to be careful with. I think that's the same with any technology, anything new that you get into, but because money is involved, you got to be extra careful. Obviously, when you're on social media, you got to be a bit careful, with it as well, but the consequences can be so much, greater with something like cryptocurrencies and crypto platforms, just because, you are putting money into it. And you've got to have a bit of common sense about you. If somebody's promising X amount of return guaranteed per month, per year, like what BitConnect and a bunch of other platforms were doing, if it looks too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. It's it's just the
It is
reality
an
of
old
things. And
role. Yeah, if it looks too good to be true, then it probably is.
yeah, and like one of the things that you can do to help yourself is just educate yourself. And I'm not even talking about direct education in cryptocurrency. I'm just talking about history, read books, learn, improve your knowledge base, learn about, '08, 2000, the dot-com bubble, the tulip bubble, the Great Recession, just old past history. You read enough about that, you'll see something and you'll think that's literally just what somebody was doing 50 years ago or 100 years ago. They packaged it up as Web3 now, or as AI or whatever it is, but it is just the same. You'll see through the bullshit. Most of the people that are falling for it, if not all of them, are people that are for the most part uneducated. And again, like I was saying, it doesn't have to be just in the space, because you can see the common traits in the business model and the common traits in the individuals perpetrating these business models throughout history. So you don't even need to understand the technology to understand that somebody's saying you're gonna get this. That don't sound right, because you know that's far better than what a $1 trillion companies that have over $1 trillion assets under management is able to do. Does that sound right to me? Probably not.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's it. Basically, if it looks too good to be true, then it probably is. I think we should probably end on that one. It's very good advice.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, for people that are interested to hear more about, what you're doing, what's the best way for them to get in touch, to see what you're about? Plus, because you have a podcasting platform, do you yourself have a podcast on there? And, obviously I'll get the link if you do for everyone.
Yeah, yeah. Come and find us on LinkedIn. We are on there, Excalibur.fm. You can find me, Simon Smith, on LinkedIn. We've got podcasts on there, and they're the same podcasts that are on the Excalibur platform, so you can just listen to them on there. It's all free content. It's open source. So, yeah, always happy to interact with people. Come and chat to us.
Oh yeah, that's I'm gonna get all the links off you, and I'll put it in the description. So that's all my more specific questions around the Excalibur platform, what you're doing. I always have a few rapid fire generic questions, fun questions that I ask. But before we get onto that, because obviously what you're doing is a startup, it's very new, it's very interesting. Is there anything specific that I haven't spoke about that you feel like would be valuable for the listeners that you want
Yeah,
to
I
touch
think
on?
we've covered a whole lot there. It's been really very exhaustive. I think that's it's been a very good podcast, and we've covered a lot of the important points for people who are listening.
Okay, so yeah, so let's do the rapid fire, questions. Would you rather run, and this will be an interesting one because you're running a company now. Would you rather run a 10-person company or a 1,000-person company, and why? Which one did you say?
10-person company.
Okay, why? Just a brief why.
The thought of running 1,000-person company just stresses me to death. Yeah, there's no way I would want that level of responsibility.
Fair enough. Would you rather have you're in the UK, so we'll stick with British pounds, 5 million up front or 500,000 a year for the rest of your life, and quick reason why?
5 million up front. The reason why is inflation is going to be rife, and 500,000 a year will be worth very little in a few years' time.
Okay. And favorite board game, favorite video game if you're into video game, then favorite movie.
Favorite board game is Monopoly. Video game is on my phone, Forge of Empires, which I've been playing for far too long. And favorite movie is Groundhog Day.
Okay. And talking about board games, are there any like sort of cryptocurrency blockchain board game that you know of, even if they're not directly linked into like a blockchain, but like based around that idea of it, like Monopoly is based around the idea of property, for example?
They are coming out. Yeah, you're going to be seeing them on yeah. Bitcoin Lightning will be enabling probably a decentralized version of Monopoly. Probably many other things will exist on that platform.
Okay, I mean that definitely sounds exciting. I think we'll have to have a few games of that. Okay, final question. It's a two-parter. Does money buy you happiness? And what does a good life mean to you?
I think money doesn't buy you happiness, but it helps. And certainly having no money at all can make you very sad. Having a good life is all about having the right people in your life, good friends, good family, people that you can trust, and making the right decisions for yourself.
Okay, sounds good. So yeah, enjoy the podcast today. Thank you for coming on, Simon. Really valuable for me and the listeners as well. So like I said, I'll put all the links to contact Simon and to check out Excalibur in the description. Thank you for coming on, and I hope you enjoy the podcast as well.
It's been brilliant. Thank you very much for the invite. Looking forward to speaking to you again soon.
Sounds good. Take care, everyone, and enjoy the next week's episode of FireDEV. Bye bye.